For years, America's Got Talent has been more than just a stage. It's been a place where ordinary people step into the spotlight and, in a single moment, become unforgettable. We've watched dreams come alive, voices that gave us chills, performances that made us believe in something bigger. But behind those standing ovations, behind the golden buzzers and viral moments, there are stories we didn't fully see. Stories of struggle, of silent battles, of lives that changed far too soon. Tonight, we're looking at the journeys of performers who didn't just leave their mark on the stage, but left something much deeper behind. Because sometimes the brightest lights fade the fastest, and their stories stay with us long after the music ends. And as you listen, you may find yourself asking one simple question: how well do we really know the people we admire? Some performers walk onto a stage with talent. Others walk in carrying something far heavier. Skylar Hicks was one of those rare souls who carried both. Born in South Carolina, her love for music didn't come from fame or ambition, it came from loss. After the sudden passing of her father, Skylar found herself searching for a way to process grief that felt too big for words. So she turned to songwriting. Music became her outlet, her comfort, her way of holding on to someone she had lost. At just 14 years old, she stepped onto the America's Got Talent stage with a guitar in her hands and a story in her heart. When she began to sing, it wasn't just a performance, it was something raw and deeply personal. Her voice trembled not from fear, but from emotion. And in that moment, something powerful happened. The judges weren't just impressed, they were moved. The audience wasn't just watching, they were feeling every word. Skylar wasn't trying to be perfect. She was simply being real. And people connected with that instantly. But what the world saw on stage was only part of her story. Off stage, Skylar was fighting battles that weren't visible to the millions who admired her. The pressure of early fame, combined with personal struggles, began to weigh heavily on her. There were moments when she disappeared from the public eye, leaving fans worried and searching for answers. Still, she kept creating, she kept writing. Because for her, music wasn't just something she did, it was something she needed. Then, in December 2021, the news came that no one was ready to hear. Skylar Hicks passed away at just 23 years old. For many, it felt unreal. How could someone so full of emotion, so full of life, be gone so soon? But her story leaves behind a powerful reminder. Sometimes the people who seem the strongest are quietly carrying the heaviest burdens. And sometimes the songs they leave behind say everything they couldn't. Some voices don't just sing, they tell stories. Nolan Neal had a voice like that. Born in Nashville, music was always part of his world. But it wasn't just passion, it was survival. After losing his father at a young age, Nolan turned to music as a way to cope with pain that never really went away. As he grew older, his talent opened doors. He performed, wrote songs, and built a career that many would dream of. On the surface, it looked like he had made it. But behind that success, there was a struggle that few people fully understood. Addiction. It crept into his life, slowly, pulling him into a cycle that was incredibly difficult to break. Nolan didn't hide it. In fact, he spoke openly about his battles, his relapses, and the moments when he felt like he had hit rock bottom. But he also spoke about hope. When he stepped onto the America's Got Talent stage, he didn't just perform, he shared his truth. With a guitar in hand, he sang a song that reflected everything he had been through. It wasn't polished. It wasn't perfect. It was honest. And once again, honesty made all the difference. The judges saw it. The audience felt it. For a moment, it seemed like Nolan was stepping into a new chapter, one defined not by his struggles, but by his strength. But some battles don't end easily. In July 2022, Nolan Neal passed away at the age of 41 due to an accidental overdose. The news was devastating, especially for those who knew how hard he had fought to overcome his demons. His story isn't just about loss. It's about the reality that recovery is not a straight path. It's messy, it's difficult, and for some, it's a fight that never truly ends. But through it all, Nolan left behind something meaningful, music that spoke to people who felt broken and reminded them they weren't alone. Then there are those who seem to live two lives, one of purpose and one of passion. Brandon Rogers was exactly that kind of person. By profession, he was a doctor, a man dedicated to healing others, to showing compassion in moments when people needed it most. That calling came from a childhood memory he never forgot. Watching his mother being treated not as a person, but as a case. He promised himself he would be different. And he was. But medicine wasn't his only gift. Brandon had a voice, warm, powerful, and filled with emotion. Singing was his escape, his way of expressing the care and kindness he carried inside. One simple video changed everything. He recorded himself singing and shared it online, not expecting much. But the internet had other plans. The video spread, and before long, he was invited to audition. When he stepped onto the stage, he delivered a performance that left the audience in awe. It felt like the beginning of something big. But life had other plans. Just weeks before his journey could truly begin, Brandon Rogers was involved in a car accident. He passed away at only 29 years old. It was a loss that didn't just affect his family. It affected everyone who had seen even a glimpse of what he could become. Yet his legacy didn't disappear. It lived on in the lives he touched as a doctor and in the hearts of those who heard him sing. Some dreams begin early when the world still feels full of endless possibilities. Emily Gold was living that dream. A talented dancer and a natural leader, she brought energy and life to every performance. As part of her school's dance team, she wasn't just a participant, she was the heart of it. To everyone around her, Emily seemed unstoppable. But even the brightest energy can hide quiet struggles. Behind the smiles and performances, she was facing pressures that many young people understand all too well. The need to succeed, to lead, to meet expectations that never seem to slow down. And sometimes those pressures become overwhelming. In September 2024, Emily Gold passed away at just 17 years old. The news left people asking the same heartbreaking question. How could someone so full of light be hurting so deeply? Her story is a reminder that not all struggles are visible, and that sometimes the people who inspire others the most are the ones who need support the most. Her team continues to dance in her honor, carrying her spirit forward with every step. And then there are performers who defy expectations entirely. Bernie Barker wasn't what anyone expected. At 65 years old, he stepped onto the stage with confidence and a sense of humor that immediately captured attention. But behind the unconventional act was a man who had lived a full and complex life. A nuclear engineer by profession, Bernie chose to embrace a completely different side of himself later in life. He wasn't just performing, he was making a statement about identity, confidence, and the courage to be unapologetically yourself. His time on stage was memorable not because it was perfect, but because it was fearless. Sadly, just a year after his appearance, Bernie passed away from prostate cancer. His story reminds us that it's never too late to step into the spotlight and that courage doesn't have an age limit. Some voices feel almost otherworldly. Liz Agnes had one of those voices. Her performances weren't just songs, they were experiences, blending classical training with raw emotion. She created moments that stayed with people long after they ended. But her life, like many others, was marked by loss. After losing someone she loved deeply, she stepped away from music, unsure if she would ever return. But eventually, she found her way back stronger and more determined than before. Her journey showed that even after heartbreak, passion can find its way back. In 2024, Liz Agnes passed away, leaving behind a legacy of resilience and artistry. Some stories, however, reach far beyond the stage. Christina Grimmie was one of those stories. She connected with people not just through her voice, but through her authenticity. Fans didn't see her as a distant celebrity, they saw her as someone real. And that's what made her loss so devastating. In 2016, her life was tragically cut short in an act of violence that shocked the world. But her impact didn't end there. Her kindness, her music, and her connection with fans continue to live on. And then there was Nightboard, a name that became a symbol of something far greater than music. When she walked onto the stage, she didn't look like someone chasing fame. She looked like someone carrying a story, and what she shared would stay with millions forever. Diagnosed with cancer and given a small chance of survival, she chose not to focus on fear. She chose to focus on living. Her song wasn't just a performance, it was a message. A reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is still light. When she said, "You can't wait until life isn't hard anymore before you decide to be happy," it resonated in a way few words ever do. In 2022, Nightboard passed away, but her message didn't. It continues to inspire people around the world, proof that even the shortest lives can leave the deepest impact. These stories are not just about loss. They're about courage, about passion, about the unseen battles that so many people fight every single day. They remind us that behind every performance is a human being with fears, struggles, and dreams that go far beyond the stage. And maybe, just maybe, they remind us to look a little closer, to listen a little more, and to never take a moment for granted. Because sometimes the most powerful legacies aren't built on how long someone lived, but on how deeply they were felt.